Hey everyone, welcome to the third in the series of tutorials that I'm doing on Blender. So the first thing I want to talk about is Shift-C. I'll just hold down my Shift and middle mouse button to move my screen over a little bit, and if I hit Shift-C, you can see that it centers everything on my screen into my view. And the name of the command in the menu is actually Center Cursor and View All. So I use that one quite a bit. And you can also use Ctrl and Numpad 0. That centers your view to the cursor. So if I move the cursor to here, centers the view to there. So that can also come in handy because you'll see later that we can actually snap the cursor to various objects. So you can also go into the view menu that I was just in, Align View, and there's a couple of other options for you. I mostly use these two, the Shift-C and the Ctrl Numpad period. I'm going to talk a little bit about the keypad. If you press 3 on your keypad, you'll notice you get a side view. Press 1, you get a front view. Press 7, you get a top view. Oh, there's some leftover planes from the last course I did tutorial, so I'll get rid of those. If I hit Control 1, I get the back view. So 1 is front, Control 1 is back, 3 is side, Control 3 is other side, 7 is top, and as you would imagine, Control 7 is bottom. Now you also have the 2, 4, 6, and 8 keys allow you to sort of incrementally rotate, but because I use middle mouse button so much, I don't generally use those often. And just as a reminder, if you hit Shift and middle mouse button, you can also pan around. So between the panning and the middle mouse button just to orbit, I don't really need to use the other keys. But I do use 1, 3, and 7 a lot because I want to have a nice flat view in front of me. And that takes me to the next key, which is 5. And that switches you between the two perspectives. So this is perspective view, and this is ortho. I don't know what it means, orthoscopic or orthodontist or some kind of view. You want to be careful with this. You don't want to be doing adding any kind of objects in this view. I almost exclusively work in this view. The problem with this view is you really never know if you're completely flat to the screen or not. And so if I think I'm looking pretty good, and then I go to that view and I add something, there's no guarantee that it's exactly where I want it to be. Oh, did you notice that the plane didn't get added in the view that we set yesterday? I'm going to go back and fix that. I don't know why that didn't save, so I want to align to view. So you'll note if I add another plane, it's actually being pasted or created in the window view as opposed to the world. I mentioned that in the last video if you're not sure what I'm talking about. But anyway, yeah, so you're going to want to leave it in ortho view. If you are ever, in the 3D window, you're like, why doesn't that look too good? Just hit the 5 key, hit the 1 key, and you'll be back to where you want to be. So I mentioned in my last video that you can zoom in with the mouse wheel, and we set it in the options so that you would zoom in whatever you're pointed at with your arrow, which is also really handy. I showed you in the view menu that you can zoom to an object by just hitting period. So if I select the camera and I hit period, it'll zoom in on it. If I select the light, same thing. This can come in handy when you're modeling all kinds of different things and you want to just have a look at something up close, one particular thing. The other thing that's interesting is I can select the camera in my outliner, and then when I go back here and hit period, it'll automatically zoom into it. So there's two ways. If something's not on screen, of course, you can just select it from the outliner and then click period and it'll zoom in on you. Now that all assumes that everything's on screen. If you have something that's in a layer that isn't exposed, and I'll talk about layers later, then obviously you won't be able to hit period to go to it. And there's another way to zoom, and that's Shift B. If you hit Shift B and then you drag the box, that automatically zooms in as well. Similar to period, really. I use both. The cool thing about Shift B is you can actually shift or zoom into two objects at once. So another thing we're going to look at, I'll just get you to hit N in the 3D window, and you'll see under the view panel there's something called clip. You want to lower that to as short as possible. It's hard for me to explain why it needs to be done, but when you're zooming in and out in camera view, sometimes stuff will get clipped, like it'll cut into the models. Anyway, I'll save you grief. Just set that to the lowest value possible. Okay, you can hit N to get rid of that. I'm going to put the cursor here, hit Control 0, zoom out a little bit. Now we're going to save our file again, but before we do, right-click on the monkey, go up to the modifiers panel. Don't worry about what I'm doing here. I'll explain it after. Go down, open up the modifiers panel, and select subdivision surface. In the views, whatever that thing's called, click it once to go to 2. Now hit T. Make sure you're in the 3D window. Hit T. Hit Tab. Then find the shading box and click Smooth. Hit Tab again, hit N again, and we have a pretty good look monkey. Sorry, hit N and T to get rid of the two subpanels in your 3D window. Now go up to the Material section here, click New. Go down to this area and just find a color you like, and that's it. Now go ahead and save this. Don't worry about everything I just showed you. I'm going to show it again in later tutorials. I just want this layout for the next time you load your blend file for my tutorial. So just hit F2. Like I said, you can hit plus on your so I already have tutorial blend 2. You can hit plus on your number pad. It'll automatically give it a 3, as you can see, and just hit enter. So the next time we start a tutorial, you can load this one up. The next key that I'm going to talk about a little bit is the home key. It's essentially view all is what it means. It's kind of similar to some of the other ones, but it comes in handy when you have an object, somewhere off the screen that you may or may not have known about, or you do a search in this window and there's an object somewhere and you're not quite sure where it is. If you just hit home, it'll zoom out and encompass everything that's on your screen, and then you can see, oh, I left a model up here, or a light up there or something, and it'll allow you to locate it pretty quickly. Now again, you could just do a search for it here and then hit period to do the same thing, but I just thought I would talk about it a little bit. So the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video is layers. These buttons along the bottom here are your layers, and if you're familiar with any kind of graphics program, you know what layers do. You can move things to different layers, you can expose various layers at various times. So I'll go over to the monkey here and right click to select. So hit Shift D to duplicate them, hit Shift D again to duplicate them again. Now all three of these monkeys are in this layer because that happens to be the layer I'm on. If I right click one of the monkeys and I hit M on my keypad, I can choose to move it to another layer. So I'll move it to the second layer, and as you can see, it's gone. And if you look at the layers, you can see if there's a dot on the layer, that means there's something on the layer. So for me to see it, I would have to hold down Shift to select that layer. If I don't hold down Shift, it'll select only that layer. So if you want to select multiple layers, you obviously have to hold Shift to do that. So this comes in handy. I did a really big project with a watch, and it had so many different models and components to it that I basically had them scattered around off on 10 layers. And when you get really complex models and you're trying to move around and zoom in and out and things like that, it can get really slow on your computer. So it's really good to move things around in layers. I generally actually keep the camera and the light on the very last layer, this layer right here. So because I don't need to see it while I'm modeling, I only want to see it at the end when I place the camera and move the lights around to do whatever it is I like. So I'll be using the layers in future videos a little bit, but that's the gist of it. It's pretty simple. Select an object, and click M to move it to a specific layer. Hold Shift to select multiple layers. And the last thing I'll say is the tilde key, which is right beside the 1 key. If you hit tilde, it selects all. If you hit it again, it deselects all. Except for, why did it not deselect that? Oh, apparently it deselects all except for one layer, whatever layer you happen to be on. It's news to me. I thought that didn't work that way. But anyway, so yeah, you can quickly. I like to use this if I'm planning to say I model a car and I want to just keep the tire and save it in a blend file, just the tire, because then you can import it into another blend file using Shift F11. So what I'll do is I'll select, say, the monkey. I can see that the monkey's in this layer, so I'll select all layers, and then I'll deselect the one with the monkey. I'll then hit A to select everything on the screen, hit X to delete it, and now the only thing left is the things on layer 1. And then I can just save the blend file, and it will have nothing in it but the stuff that was on layer 1, which could be anything, a tire or even a lamp setup. Sometimes I have a lamp setup I like, and I'll delete everything but the lamps. I'll save the blend file, and then you can do an import afterwards. So to import stuff from another file, it's right here, Shift F1, you click Append. At that point you can go in to any blend file. Let me just see if I can find one. Dancing Pies. I haven't looked at that in ages. So then I can go into objects, and you can see there's all kinds of objects in here. I can highlight a bunch of them, hit enter, and they've just been imported. It's been ages since I looked at this file, but there's a bunch of things in it. So like I said, you can save various items in a file, and then you can go ahead and re-import them later. Anyway, that's it for the third video, and I'll see you in the next part.